Welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here and checking out the series. You know what to do, like what you see, what you hear. Hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists. And I have got one of my all-time favorites, Philip Selway. You know him from Radiohead. He's back with a brand new solo record called Strange Dance. How you doing today, Philip?
I'm doing really well, thanks, Carl. And thank you for having me here today.
It is a pleasure to have you here. And especially behind just this, I don't even know the words to use because I want to call it beautiful, but it's also dark, sometimes a little bit scary and fun at other times and interesting. But this record, Strange Dance, it really is such a great experience. So just my first congratulations on this.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the first time I've heard scary is just an adjective in relation to it as well. So that one's yours, Kyle. Thank you. I like that.
I'll get around to what I mean by that here in just a bit too. But let's maybe start with where the album starts. Like when do you know that it's time to start a record? Are you the kind that just sort of writes all the time and it becomes fluid, and before you know it, you're in it, or is there like, okay, now it's time to make a record? How does this one find its beginning?
So I think in terms of material, I've always got stuff kind of going on in the background. I don't sit down necessarily on a day and think, right, I'm going to write a song today. I'll sit down and do something musical, and if I'm lucky, something will come along. So it's building on those moments. And once I feel that I've got enough of those moments in place to make a record, then that makes the decision for me. And so you get to that point and then kind of decide what it is that where you want to take the album musically, and all those important decisions, like who would you like to work with, like the most important decision actually. And I found that through my kind of decades worth of solo work, I built up these really rich musical relationships with people that I've been working on my records, doing my solo work, or doing my soundtrack work as well. And so I had a good idea of the kind of musical voices that they could all bring to it. So it's people like Adrian Utley and Quinta, and Laura Moody, who's done all the wonderful string and brass arrangements, Anna Peel. So you have this idea of thinking, I think all those musical voices would blend together really well. Then you have to kind of pluck the courage up to go off and ask everybody. Fortunately, everybody said yes. And another crucial relationship in that was Marta Salogni, who's produced and mixed the album. And I'd originally worked with Marta back in 2013, I think, when I was finishing off my second album. She was the engineer on the vocal sessions for that one. And I remember at the time just being so struck by her talent in the studio. Her engineering skill was excellent, her taste in music, and just the way that she managed a session. So I had that sense coming into this one that actually to pull all these different elements together, it felt quite ambitious to me. And to then know that Marta would be at the center of that, helping me pull everything into focus, that gave me the confidence then to go on ahead and make the record. So there we go. That's a very long-winded answer to your question there, Carl.
That's all right, because like I noticed Marta. I mean, you're talking about having great taste in music. Like, I don't know that she was doing them simultaneously, but she's also done, I think, the latest Depeche Mode record as well, and looking at sort of her back catalog, and it's like, yeah, like, I'm not saying she's got a mood, but she knows how to create a mood, and that must be a big part of this relationship. Like, what was your all's process?
So before we even got into the studio, I shared the material with Marta, kind of in its very stripped back form, which was just me, an acoustic guitar or piano. But those those tracks then kind of made the basis of the sessions going forward. But those initial conversations were so important. It was just trying to work out what the parameters of the record would be. And that was always very important to be able to return to that during the actual recording sessions, because so much was going on that you could easily find yourself going off down some obscure alleyway if you wanted to with it. But then just having had that kind of blueprint from the outset, and Marta really taking that to heart, that kept a real focus in the sessions, made them really productive, really collaborative. And I think that, again, it's one of the amazing talents Marta has in the studio, that ability to just to really absorb what it is that you want to get out of a record, and then finding ways to unlock that for you. And but also, I mean, from my point of view, just having that absolute confidence in her decision making. And so at those points, kind of, whereas I might have been maybe slightly indecisive, it would be great to be able to reflect that back to Marta, and I felt confident in kind of the discussion that we would have then, that would be the right way forward.
Yeah. What you all did create, and not just you and Marta, but, you know, as you're talking about this whole team of people, you all did create such a coherent sound. And it's not a sound that's really present on your previous albums. I mean, of course, there's you and there's those hints of that, but this is its own thing. Why did you land on this specific sound? I mean, was it something you were looking for, or is this more of like, this is just what happens when you bring these people together?
Yeah, it was something that I was aiming for. I mean, I had that kind of that widescreen soundscape to it in my head before we started working. And I knew I wanted to develop the kind of methodology that I've been learning in doing soundtrack work, and just really explore kind of more orchestral textures in the context of my songs. But then with that, just kind of have a knowledge of everybody's individual musical voice. But then it was kind of wide open as to how those would all blend once we were all in the studio together. That was the exciting part of it for me, really. And there were some lovely surprises along the way. And it was, and from that angle, it was a very, very inspiring environment to work in.
Yeah, just the joys of finding a new band in that sense. It's what it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also thought it was interesting. You know, you mentioned Adrian Utley in there too, for Portishead, and hearing about how when you first decided to make solo record that you were almost mimicking a little bit Beth Gibbons, and I thought, how important is Portishead in your world? Because it seems really sort of all around the area.
Well, it kind of, with Radiohead and Portishead, it feels like we've been kind of moving in parallel for the past couple of decades plus. So it was, you know, in Radiohead, we have for the past 13 years now, Clive Deamer, who's brings all those wonderful drum and percussion textures to Portishead. He's been playing with us. So it's, yeah, I mean, I love Portishead. Kind of, they've done one of my favorite ever shows, I think, that I've been to. And that was, thinking back to it, it was back in 1997. So we'd been out touring with OK Computer. It'd been quite full on. And I just remember going to see them play at Brixton Academy in London, and just standing there. And it was just like this wave of emotion just came over me. It was coming off the stage. And I actually found myself standing there watching it in floods of tears. And, you know, so I think their music can really get under your skins. Definitely got under my skin. And they're just kind of great musicians, and I've loved working with Adrian as well. He's just, he comes with his producer head as well. And so, there's always, when you're in the studio, you're always trying to find those solutions to the puzzle that is the song that you're working on at the time. And Adrian can just cut through that stuff and just come from so many different angles when you're working through it all. So yeah, he's a wonderful person to work with.
Yeah. And just coincidentally, I before we started this interview, I was online and noticing that, was it last night, St. Vincent with the Roots on Fallon doing Glory Box. So
oh, really?
they're everywhere right now in this little world.
Oh, amazing. I'll have to go and have a look for that one. That sounds incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful and moody and exactly what you'd hope for in it. It's worth watching. Yeah. So getting back into Strange Dance. So we get to the beginning, the opening song, you got Little Things. And the first thing that we hear you say is, don't believe what they say. I think that's an opening line. That's a hell of an opening line. And even,
you like it?
Yeah. And then when you put that, you go further, what keeps you awake at night? Like, it's not a Paranoid album, but there seems to be a lot of paranoia in the record. Where did that come from?
I'm not a paranoid person all the time. But it does seep out from time to time, I guess. It's so you were talking about the kind of the opening line, don't believe what they say, in that track, Little Things. That song is very much about that experience of being gaslit, basically, whether that's on a very personal level. I'm sure we've all experienced that, or as we've all felt, I guess, over the past, 3 or 4 years, on a kind of on a much broader, kind of, for want of a better word, societal, governmental level as well. And I felt that song, it seemed to key in to a common experience. I felt that, but I saw, I'd experienced throughout many different aspects of my life. And having said that, kind of, when I really settled down with the lyrics on the album, I think that was the first complete lyric I had, was Little Things. But I also was aware that I didn't want to write an album about myself. I wanted to write songs which would be relatable, and kind of emotionally resonant, but I didn't really want them to be autobiographical. I wanted to leave a room for anybody who's listening to the record to find their own narrative, if you like, in that. So kind of, as I was writing, it was a case of kind of trying to erase myself from the songs as much as possible, but leave this framework in there, if you like, which kind of hopefully rings true.
Yeah. Here's my house. I'm not in it, but here you go. Have a walk around. It's really interesting, but and I'll give it to you though, because if that's how the record starts, by the time we get to the end, you say there'll be better days.
Yeah.
Do you just feel like you have to, like, oh, we can't just leave you here. There's got to be at least a little bit of hope there at the end.
I try. There's a little bit of hope in all of them, I think. You dig around, and it's there in each song, I think.
No, it's there. And to be fair, you're correct. I'm obviously looking at the extremes, of the sides of the LP to this, but even when I just saw the title, I thought, okay, no, I get it.
Yeah.
A little bit of sugar with the medicine, sure. What?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the closing line, it felt like a really really good place to leave the record. I mean, part of what I wanted to do with the record was kind of create this kind of refuge space, if you like, and that felt very in keeping with that sense, rather than
Yeah. Well,
signing off. So life's shit. Get on with it. You know?
I mean, some days I'll agree with you on one side, and some days I'll agree with you on that statement right there too. It's it's an interesting world, and where we'll end up, we'll only see, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there's the title track, and that's one of the most interesting, one of my favorite parts of this. And I'm talking about Strange Dance. This is a song that sounds like it's built instead of written, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You may have said this in another interview about a little Tom Waits thing, and I got that on the beginning, like what's he building in there type of a thing. That, like, there are Tom Waits songs that sound, like angels handed him the piano part and there it is. And then there are songs that sound like he went out in his tool shed with no instruments whatsoever, and here's what we have at the end. Strange Desire to me feels a little bit more like that in the best possible way. I would just love to hear how this song came into existence.
So that song has been it's been, kind of filtering around my head for about the past 2 decades. It was I wrote it on acoustic guitar. Really didn't know what to do with it at the time. I knew there was a good melody in there, and I kind of liked the kind of the harmonic progression in there. By the time I brought it to these album sessions, it had morphed into a piano ballad, which was pretty, but I kind of felt that there was a lot more to mine from it. So yes, I think you're right. There was this amazing collection of people there, with all these, as I was saying earlier on, with all these very distinctive musical voices, and so kind of once we had that rhythm track in place, with Valentina Magaletti, most amazing drummer and percussionist, who brought so many of the songs to life for me, and they just created this bed that we could then build up all these different elements, really keying into everybody's individual voice, and then building up these weird and wonderful orchestral elements on top of it. And yeah, it was so satisfying here. It would emerge from the mist, if you like. It came from this very saccharine place almost to just this very angular, and kind of quite singular soundscape going on there, I felt. And yeah, it just felt like the culmination of that particular collaboration, really, with all those musicians. And yeah, I was really made up with the result on that one.
Yeah, perfect title, With the Strange Dance, just given the feel
Yeah,
of that track too. And it's almost like the juxtaposition, like you have a track like that, and then you have like Picking Up the Pieces, and the heart of it all. Those two come to mind in, like, the poppier side. I'm just saying that sort of in a broad sense. These hooks that exist through that. And I was laughing because, you go back to Radiohead, and there's this reputation that you all just ran away from anything that could be catchy, for a while. But, and I hear catchiness in Picking Up the Pieces. I hear catchiness in these other songs. I hear catchy moments in the Smiles record and EOB's record.
yeah.
What does that reputation mean to you, and why does it exist? Just to ask, I guess, directly.
Well, one side of it for me, I don't really kind of start moving forward on something until I feel that there is some distinct melody there, or some kind of hook around that, which can kind of propel the whole piece together. But weighed against that, I mean, like within Radiohead, we've been a band for nearly 40 years. We're trying to accommodate a lot of musical ideas in there. And I think when you become, I think as you develop as a band, as a musician, you kind of see this whole world of musical textures that you can try and lose yourself in, and try and work them into your material. And so, yes, I think on one side of it, you do have this catchiness, which kind of, I think, buys you a lot of space within a piece. There is something there that actually is something to hold on to, but it does then give you this scope around that to try out all these different musical textures, all these different approaches to songs. I mean, I think I'm at heart probably still a bit of a pop head as well. I love pop, and but with that as well, just so inspired by kind of all the incredible musicians that I've been able to work with in over all my projects. So, that brings together these two sides, I think. And yeah, I think there've been plenty of melodies in Radiohead over the years. I see people singing along.
and that's true. Like, even as I'm saying that, I think of songs, Burn the Witch, Morning Mr. Magpie. These are just ones coming to mind. There. These are songs that have odd structures, but it's all there. And I guess what I was getting at is, but that reputation sort of existed. Like, even in contrast to what you were actually producing, there was that idea, and I think that's what interesting. It's less about the songwriting and more about the perception, which may not be something that you can even,
but I
have
think
an answer for.
No, but I think that's a really interesting point, Kyle. And I think it's not just us. I think you can apply that to anybody, particularly people who've had quite a long musical career. On the whole, you don't get to know their complete catalogue, do you? But you have this idea of what they will do, and that becomes quite fixed as well. It's no bad thing, It's and from the point of view of kind of everything that falls under the Radiohead umbrella, I can think of worse associations to have. So, but it's I think it is something that applies. It's always a shorthand, isn't it? It is the equivalent of going into a record store and having everything, the kind of the stacking of the cataloging by genre. It kind of reduces everything down to something that doesn't tell the whole story, but it's also something that gives you a way in, a good signpost into it, and kind of helps you kind of understand those initial forays into people's music.
Well, you guys have made some incredible music over the year. You're still You're still making incredible music with this stuff. I know this is always the $10,000 question. Is there going to be more Radiohead albums?
Well, we are always talking about future plans at the moment, and we're all very keen to do something together again musically. Whether that would start with an album, I don't know yet, to be honest with you, but there will be something happening musically, and we'll see where it goes from there. Kind of when we do something again, it will be for the right reasons, and if a record comes out of that, it'll be bloody marvelous. But I think it's just that whole process of finding. I mean, we won't have played with each other for when's the last lot of touring? 2018. So that's the kind of the last time that we made music together. And so I think whatever happens, we're going to need that time to find our way around each other musically, and everybody, we've all been doing our different projects as well. So everybody will have changed musically as well. But that's kind of the excitement of it, really. It's kind of, well, I wonder how it will sound when we do it again.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be an interesting spot to be in a band. You all seem like you're in an interesting spot, like to have gone so hard as you went for so long, and then it sort of seemed like, okay, we all got to walk away from this for a minute, and I can't imagine, trying to stay a gang with, my childhood friends in that sort of relationship, and that's for any band. I'm not just, commenting on Radiohead, like that any band can pull that off. It's just sort of incredible, and to for everybody still to be around. I mean, how many bands can you name? U2,
Yeah.
and Pearl Jam. It starts to sort of fall apart from after that. It doesn't really work. So it's just that you guys are still talking to each other at all. My compliments.
No, we're in an extremely fortunate position, and I think we know that, and we don't want to fritter that at all.
Yeah. I hope. Are you going to do much touring behind Strange Dance? Is it going to be many tour dates?
Yeah, I'm starting on those. I've done some shows already. It's all been UK based at the moment. I go back out in May as well. Going to be European and UK shows, and kind of looking into what be able to do coming over to North America. It would be, yeah, I'd love to bring it over, and it's also it's been interesting so far. It's had already, even though I've kind of done a dozen shows so far this year, but each kind of, it's gone through various incarnations live already. So there's been like a band version, which has been with Adrian Utley and Quinta and brilliant drummer Chris Vattalaro, and there's me going out solo. It's the first time ever, which is yeah, that was quite quite the experience. Quite enjoyed it. And then I did just done a couple of shows with quartet and percussionist, and that was fantastic. And it's really interesting seeing material in all these different contexts. So yes, I'll have to see what works and what I can bring to the States. I'd love to come and do some shows. So if you could put the word out there that Philip would like to come and do some shows, that would be great.
I'll spread the word. I'll start telling my friends, tell their friends. Even if you do the big cities, I'll travel. I would love to see this album live. If you do come around Louisville, we'll head down to Elizabethtown and we'll check that place out for yourself so you can.
Yes, please. Yeah, I know that film very well.
It's not a lot to see around there, and I think half of it was actually shot here in Louisville. But we'll make the trip.
Was it?
That way you can see you did it. So.
Don't shatter the illusion for me, Kyle, please.
Don't shatter it. Philip, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it. I love Strange Dance and what you're doing, and it's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise. Thank you, Kyle. You take care.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week. New one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All 3 of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.